How does embracing our mortality lead to living bigger, bolder, and with more purpose? Is talking about death off limits, or does courageously facing our inescapable expiration date lead to discovering what life is really all about? I'm Morgan Motzinger, and this is the PS We Expire podcast. Each week, we'll unpack insights from psychology, neuroscience, and spirituality to equip ourselves with ways to navigate our inner world and relate to others with more courage and authenticity. Grab your sense of humor, your burning questions, or your very favorite existential crisis. It's time to explore the thrilling and challenging limited time offer we call life.
My story began as a lost English major, graduating from college and really not knowing what I wanted to do with that degree, what I wanted to do with work. The only example of work that I had in my household growing up was like government employees. My dad was in the military, my mom was a civil servant. And so it's just like you get a good, steady, stable job somewhere and you work it. You do, you do a good job, you're consistent and dependable, and like you provide that sort of consistency and stability that way. So I was kind of operating with that as like the model. But when I got out into the workforce, I guess I was just young and exploring and trying to figure out like also how to pay off these huge student loans that I had. So I started out actually at Simon & Schuster Publishing. And I worked there for the head of corporate communications and had all this experience working. I was on the executive floor. So I would pass the CEO, talk to him, have coffee in the morning. My boss was the SVP. Like everybody I talked to day was either them or their assistants. So from the very beginning of my career, I was always working with these really senior people. And it was like the first thing I thought I could do with my English major. But publishing is not like the most lucrative place to be if it's not your passion. And so, again, I had these student loans. So I moved on into finance because I had friends who were bankers and doing all these fancy things in these big banks. And I was like, you know what? I know I can get paid more money there. Let me see if I can find like an administrative role, an operational role, something in the background, and just learn things and make enough money to feel like I can survive this New York environment and pay my loans at the same time. And so I did that for a number of years at a couple of different firms. And it was never like passion. I would never felt connected to my work per se. I liked some of the people that I really, that I work with and learned from. But I reached a certain point, honestly, in my life. My mom got really sick with what we now know is an autoimmune disease, as she's managing it, and but it was just this thing out of nowhere where she just became unresponsive one day, and it just took our family for a loop, and that sparked my therapy journey, which is where I started my coaching journey, because my therapist was like, "Are you sure you don't maybe want to become a therapist one day?" And I was like, "Oh, do I want to be a therapist?" And so I started moonlighting, doing different projects. There are these guys that I met. This is so random. I was on a flight to Vegas, and there were these guys. If you're like Black on a plane and there's other Black people, we like give each other the nod and like always say hi. And so I was like, hey, like, let's catch up. We ended up getting brunch, and and they told me about this work that they were doing with a diversity talent organization that was basically connecting diverse talent with investment banks and consulting firms. I was like, oh, I work at an investment bank, and this is interesting. They're like, hey, come volunteer at our conference. You can meet people, learn things. And so I was doing that. Then I became a virtual coach for them after I built that relationship. So I was just doing online coaching on people's resumes and things like that. And it was kind of cool, but I wanted to get past people's resumes. So all this was kind of coming to a head at the same time, me in my therapy journey with my mom getting sick and realizing all these things about myself, me having built up this sort of moonlighting part of myself, working with these guys in their organization. And then I got married, and my husband and I were both like, he's from the South, I'm from the Midwest. We're like, we're done with this New York life. We're done with we need things to quiet down. We need to like kind of spread out a little bit more. We need warm weather. And so we moved out to California to restart life and reinvent ourselves professionally. So that's when I got into tech. I had that unique virtual coaching experience with those guys that I was working with. there was a startup. I ended up being employee number 7 that was looking for someone to help them build a coaching team for this mental health product. So I learned a lot about mental health. I coached hundreds and hundreds of people, and then I coached coaches who coached hundreds of thousands of people through this mental health program that focused on anxiety and depression, and social anxiety was actually our first product. And I learned a lot of skills for my own health and well-being, cognitive behavioral therapy, just learning those tools. I think it's become like a generative, like life-saving, practice for myself at this point. And then all kinds of other training. But as I was there and I was kind of building up this coaching identity and then kind of getting acquainted with what it's like to be an entrepreneur I ended up being on the leadership team with my COO and our CEO, the founders, and, our CTO and stuff. And so it pushed me to see myself in a different way. I was like, oh, I can, like, these people who are around me are so smart. A lot of them had business experiences that I never touched and anything close to it. Some of them had startup experience before. Everything was brand new to me. But what I realized, I was like, they're not doing this because they're smarter than everybody else. They're doing it because they're okay with making shit up every day. Like they're okay with the figuring it out. And it just demystified this whole thing for me. It kind of broke that model, like I said, that I grew up with, where it's just like, just go somewhere, get a good job. That's how you keep yourself safe. That's how you keep yourself stable. That's what work is. And I had taken that on as an identity. So I shed that there. And when I had my daughter, that was the catalyst for me, because I was like, I need to own my time. I was like pumping between meetings, pumping on planes, just trying to manage my own energy, not getting sleep. You know how it goes. And I said, I can do this. I can do this. So I left with a lot of support. That was like the greatest job I ever had from that team. And I ended up contracting for them for a few months as like kind of built my bridge out. And because by the time I left, I was the director of partnerships there. So I was like, doing my work was slightly different. But we hired someone to replace me. And then I started my practice. And during that time in there, I had gotten my coaching certification, and I had learned all kinds of things as well. So yeah, that's what brings me to my practice. Very long story, but that's it.
That's a great story. What I like about that so much is like the two things that stuck out to me is the seemingly random connection with these guys on a plane. It's like, I think people who fall into entrepreneurship many times are like, I'm not totally sure how I got here. It was like these random events that kind of happened and just took me in this direction. And I'm really curious about how much self-trust was a part of this exploration into a different line of work. Like, how did you know, I guess, that you were like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and move in this direction, even though at that point you said when you were working with these founders that it pushed you to see yourself in a different way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? I have like a funny relationship with self-trust, because it feels, my experience of self-trust is that it's like a little pop, it's a little moment. And it's very, very fleeting. It's very, very temporary. And I think what has mattered more for me in my process of like taking different leaps, betting on myself, is the environment that I surround myself with. So it's like, I just need that little flicker of like, hey, maybe I can do it. Because I don't think it lasts long. I think, at least for me, to like fuel that from within, on my own. I have built, and I continue to build, this habit of like, who's going to fan that flame? Like, my husband was a great, person, in my life at that point in time when I initially was trying to figure this out. I found these women who were leading, building their own coaching practice. Like, I just put myself in conversation with people to help grow the possibility, to grow, the attachment to a future that felt maybe uncertain or, new. And yeah, I think that has always played a much bigger role for me than like how much I just believe in myself. I do think that this can function differently for different people. I think for some of my clients, depending on the circumstances, that you grew up in, and the mindset that you have just about life. Like, my husband is another example. Is like, he's insanely competitive. So there's a different track in his mind that is like pushing him to do those things. And I have girlfriends who, have other stuff, which is like, I grew up with nothing. And so what drives me is there's a voice in me that's like, we're never going back. Like we're going all the way to the top. And I don't have either of those. I don't have either of those. So for me, it's just been, a lot more about helping myself respond to myself by connecting with people who see the best in me, who see what I see, and even more than what I can see for myself. That has made a huge difference.
I'm going to interrupt for a quick second to invite you to download something I just created for you. It's called 6 Ways to Embrace Mortality and Live with More Purpose. These are 6 simple exercises to start to view your life through the lens of your own mortality. And I love these exercises. They're pretty easy to do. One of my favorite ones is a life review meditation. morganmotsinger.com/purpose to download your copy. Okay, back to the show. That's so helpful to hear, because I think that many people who are like you feel like there's something wrong with them if they don't have the competitive drive, or that they don't have this like internal motor that's saying, I'm never going back to this again. And it's really nice to speak with someone who has been able to build out a successful business as an entrepreneur, who are saying it's okay if you're not driven like that. Do you have a lot of clients that, well, I guess talk to me about the types of clients that you work with, and maybe some of like the things that they're struggling with the most. Why do they come to you?
Yeah. So I definitely I'd say in terms of like that motor, that driver, it's a mixed bag for the clients that come to work with me. But I will say that, the majority of my clients have some sort of traditional background, rules from their past about who they're supposed to be, what is right, what is good enough, that they are constantly, butting up against and trying to move through or move past. Oftentimes when someone is ready to do work with me, by the time we make it to that phone call, the urgency is high. And the urgency is high for, I think, for like one of two lanes. One, you are stepping into a new level of leadership, of ownership, and don't want to lose yourself in the process. Or you can already see the signs of like, I don't know where my voice is. I feel like I'm being too deferential. So this may be to your investors. This may be to your clients or customers. It could be to whoever. But it's like, I don't want this new position to override me. I want to be able to stand up into this new place that I'm going. So that's like one camp. The other camp is like, I've built really big, maybe pretty fast. I have compromised a lot. I've sacrificed a lot. I am here and I look up and I don't know who the fuck I am anymore. I don't know what I want. I can't answer that question for myself. And in both cases, it's just about recreating or stepping back into your vision for, what's the point? What is the point of it all? Who are you actually? And it's like more of a remembrance ultimately. But yeah, that's where my clients tend to come to me at. And many times it's like your health, has been compromised, or just your basic well-being is on the line. Your relationships, there's like a sense of deep isolation. You don't really feel known. A lot of people know you or know of you, but you don't actually feel known, and have that deep connection or community, or have a place that you can turn that with people who actually really get it, who really get what you're going through. And then, yeah, lastly, it's just about like that identity formation in this new future that you're building. Like, who is it that I want to be? Can I put some language and vision and clarity around that?
That seems like a really important thing to do as you're building up community around yourself, because I have often thought about this experience of rejection. If we feel rejected by other people, if I've built up this, like mask of who I am, or and I'm not really showing people who I really am. If they reject
Mhm.
that, like, it's okay. It's like, it's not going to hit me on a deep level. But if I show up as
Mm.
myself 100% and somebody rejects me, it feels so much more risky. And so I think that makes perfect sense, that the work to ask these big questions about who am I, what is my purpose, has to go in tandem with how are you finding your people? How are you finding those people who, like you said, that are fanning that little spark in you, that little flame in you, to help you become more of who you really are? So how, what does that look like when you're helping people kind of ask these like really big existential questions of like, why am I here?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is this, and it's just like so funny. Sometimes I feel like my work as a coach is beyond simple, and I'm running off of
Mhm.
these like kind of base instincts and some training, I don't know, in the background there somewhere. But the simple question of what will sit within our own minds is, who am I? What do I want? What is it that I want? Like, where am I trying to go? What should be next? What does it look like? What does it look like? If someone with true and pure intent sits across from you and asks you those very same questions, all of a sudden the answers appear.
Oh, yeah.
Who am I? If somebody, when's the last time somebody asked you, who are you?
Mhm.
Morgan, who are you? And forces you to articulate it. You're like, oh, then it's like, there it is. You know. And it's really, I think it's damn near impossible to do this for yourself.
Mhm.
I think we need other humans for this very purpose. We need someone else that's like, there's a living, breathing body, someone who cares, someone who's really listening and open to ask me the questions that I am sitting and swirling with inside my own self, but to like ask it to me in a way that actually invites me into creation as opposed to, circling. I think it's so simple. Sometimes it's wild.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is, that we can become like so wrapped up in our own stories when we just keep it in our brains. But you're right, like when someone just asks us point blank some of those questions, like the whatever comes up is often the most true answer.
Yeah. And then
Huh.
I think the key beyond that is we won't, you say it out loud, it might surprise you. You might get like, oh, wow, I do know some things. But then developing a relationship with yourself where you begin to trust that. And I
Mm.
think that's where the work really begins. Opening up, like, what is it that I want? Where is it that I want to go? What is off? What would feel like right to me? That part is easy. But once you have that, you know, I don't think awareness happens just because it's like something is illuminated one time. It's like the light goes, it's
Mm.
like the light flickers on and then it shuts right off.
Right.
Because it's kind of scary, it's like, oh, you just show me this like part of myself that's always been there. Or I've shown that to myself with, the support of somebody who's talking to me about it, engaging me in this way. But now I'm like, I don't know. Now there's like two of us in there, and I don't really
Hmm.
know the part that I'm with right now, the version of myself that I'm in right now. I'm really familiar with her, and we have a certain set of tools and patterns and practices that we navigate through with, and I don't know how to stay in the light with this other version of me. Like, I don't really know how to keep that light on, or at least to keep turning the switch on over and over again until eventually it stays on. Um, I think that's where the real work happens.
Yeah, because it's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to like make actual tangible changes in your life that support that new you, or the old you, I
Yeah.
guess, that's been unlayered by some of those digging questions. Did
Yeah.
what is that a big part of your story? I mean, you said that when you had your daughter, that was like a huge turning point for you. Can you talk some more about what that felt like, and why do you think that was such a huge catalyst for you?
Yeah. It turned fancy into necessity. Like
Hmm.
who I needed to, like what I needed to feel like in my own body, I was like, this must change. I can't, I don't, it was almost, there's this book that's kind of popular amongst entrepreneurs right now called Burn the Boats. Have you heard of this book?
Mm-mm.
I've never read it, but it's in the title, which is basically about, you give yourself no option to retreat. And I think that's what happened with my daughter, that was the internal experience that I had, was just like, there is no, there is no retreat. We cannot do this. I truly felt like I cannot function as a mother um, in this structure, this professional structure. And I had a really great setup at that point. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just, there's no place for me to pump the milk, or there's no, like, there's no what's the word I'm making? Like, accommodations being made for me as as a new mom. Or it's not that. It's just like, it's not set up to be everything I needed it to be. I'll put it that way. And so yeah, that moment was like a moment that burned the boats for me. It was just like, well, we're going to figure something else out because this ain't it.
I think that's it seems like it's a very common part of many people's story, that there isn't, like, burning the boats isn't so much a choice as it is a circumstance that happens that is so clarifying. Like, it would be really difficult to, without some type of like catalyzing event, to be like, I'm burning my old life down, but we have experiences like where your mom was sick, where your daughter is born, these big events in our lives, like my daughter's diagnosis, like all of these things that bring so much clarity to what you want your life to look like and what you want to spend your time on. And it's a really beautiful thing to be a person that gets to be there for other people when they go through those catalyzing events. And it sounds to me like that's exactly when people are coming to you. It's like when the fire gets a little bit too hot, like, okay, now what? And how do I know that I can't continue to do things the way that I've always been doing them, but how do I make that transition to this new life, or what can that even look like? And I wonder how many of us kind of stay stuck in these places where we know we don't fit anymore, just because we have not believed that something else was possible. Like, we don't have any template for what we could do besides what we are doing.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that is it. You can't reach for something that you have no line of sight into, like, not at all. And for me, and I think for the purpose that I serve, one of the greatest purposes I serve in my work as a coach with my clients is to be that hand that reaches out in the dark and says, come look. I'll hold your hand while you look. You can do it, That's, I think, the hardest part, or at least one of them, where it's like, okay, just, can someone help me walk this bridge in the dark, while I look around and I'm trying to figure out this version of myself that's trying to emerge. It's a lot going on when we have these pivotal moments in life, especially to do it alone.
Yeah, can you talk more about that? What I'm really fascinated by this conversation about bringing people along with you, or finding people who are on the same trajectory, because I don't think just in entrepreneurship, but like kind of in Western culture, we have this, we're like, we've idolized this independent, like hyper independence. You can do it on your own. You don't need anybody else. And that's just like such bullshit.
Yeah.
It's unhealthy. It's unhealthy, and it's not how we're wired. So what is, how are you working for yourself and also for your clients on building community for people who are thinking about things in a different way?
Yeah. So there's a few things. I've become, over the past several months, this year in particular, like more of a student of intimacy, connection, friendship, because I just started to recognize that that was one of the greatest services that I was providing to my clients, was just being there. And in a way where I think there's something that, it brings down the walls of, potential, expectation, or like, I'll put it this way. If you are, let's say, one of the people in your family who has found some success in your work and business, and I think because I do center a lot of women of color in my work, that tends to be a very common story. or you're first or second gen, right? And so you have these experiences, you have this access that sets you apart. It's really hard for you to feel like you can show up in the fullness of who you are, which includes your successes, which includes the new access, which includes the new things that you're learning, the things you get to be exposed to, without there being some complicated feelings or potential expectations on the other side of that relationship. Like, now, does everyone need something from me? And I think that in with the formality of like a coaching relationship, I'm hired to be in your corner. So I have no other agenda but to make sure that your agenda is met and fulfilled, right? And so I think that that yeah, just the structure in and of itself of a coaching relationship helps to release that that tension that can take place in many of the other relationships that my clients may be experiencing in their lives broadly. So it's like, okay, the money that has been exchanged, honestly, it establishes psychological safety, where it's just like, I can trust that you are here just to support me. It's set in stone. And that's rare space. I think from there, when you have that kind of rare airspace with somebody who is there purely for those purposes, and I don't think that this has to come through paid transactions, but I think if you're not used to it, like, this can be like the training wheels for you, because from there it's about one of the things that I offer to my private clients, for instance, is Voxer access. So we can audio message back and forth to each other at any point in time. And it's part of, I tell them in the beginning, this is a part of your leadership growth and your personal development, is actually trusting that this lifeline is available to you. So part of the work is just like, how much have you actually used the Voxer? How much are you actually believing that help is here, that the help is available to you? And sometimes it's not even about the bad things, like that you can like hype yourself up or celebrate a win, and that there's not going to be any weird frenemy energy or jealousy thing going on, that there's a space for that it's possible for you. So I think that again, within inside the coaching container, there is like a lot of room for just expanding your sense of possibility of like what intimate relationship can look like, what it can mean to not have to be the rock in your family or in your community, for everyone else. A lot of my clients are also mothers, where it's just like, I am attending to people's needs all day, every day, and this is a space where I don't have to do that. And I think from there you get to grow. And I think, and this becomes part of the air quote homework, for many of my clients over time as well, is how does this extend to your personal relationships and or your team? Because we are also underutilizing help in our businesses and in our personal life, because we haven't developed these skills that make us more helpable, that make us more connectable, to open ourselves in that way. Now, I think the point that you made earlier around like keeping up some, barriers, some walls to prevent the experience of rejection from it not stinging so much. But I think that the way this work can really play out is that you get to experience a new, bigger, more wide open version of yourself in a really safe container. And we create different, opportunities for you to do that, again, with your team, with your loved ones, whoever it might be. And it's like, okay, she might get hurt, but she's also a bigger expression of who you have been. And so what becomes worth it? It's like, okay, I get to hold on to this new experience of me who feels more expansive. And yeah, she's, rejection is going to hurt. Like, when I do expose myself to that potential, which is like, that's life. But I kind of feel like the benefits now outweigh the potential downside. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I think about the role that this connection and belonging and just shifting the way we relate to each other, how it plays out for me and my clients.
There's a line in a song I heard not that long ago that was like, I'm not going to get it verbatim, but it was basically like, you can't actually hurt this new version of me. Like the old version of me, you totally could have hurt. And I don't think it's so much about like that this new version of me is so armored up that you can't, that none of your words will penetrate, but it's like, I'm stronger now. I'm able to sift feedback or criticism or rejection through a different kind of filter because of who I'm now built up to be. This vision that I have of myself is so clear now. It's so connected to myself on a deeper level that it's not quite so at risk anymore. I want to
Yeah.
ask you, more questions about what you said about developing the skills of becoming more helpable. I was like, I felt like this, I felt lit up by this idea of like, how much are you using the Voxer? Because I can think back on the coaches that I've had that have offered this level of availability to me that I have felt like, I don't want to put them out. I don't, like, I'm fine. I can handle this on my own, and not even taking advantage of, but like actually utilizing them for the thing that they're saying they're available for. And so what are some of the skills that we can develop, especially in entrepreneurship, that make us more helpable and more willing to rely on the people who say that they want to be there for us?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that like it really does come down to really, first of all, like you have to have an awareness that this is a thing for you, that I want, like you have to want this for yourself. And I think the framing of like a lot of people, I would say, especially a lot of women, I hear often, like, I know I'm terrible at asking for help. Oh, I'm so terrible at asking for help. But it's still kind of held with like a badge of honorishness
Totally.
to it. And
Yeah.
so,
Yep.
and so it's like, until you actually see that as like, no, this is like a hindrance. Like, this is something that I really want to be better at because I see the upside. Then I think it's hard to actually get into the work of it. But it's really small actions. It's really small actions. It's little things like just choosing to believe people when they say, let me know. I'd love to support you. Or even people who are just like neutral and just assuming that they're available to potentially help you. And it could be, I think starting off with really, really tiny things where it's like, I just need like a 10-minute or 15-minute call for some advice for a thing I'm thinking through. One of the things that I say oftentimes to folks is like to not tolerate being stuck. I think we have too high of a tolerance for it. And then we go internal and look for all of our, like, dig through as many of our internal resources that we possibly have and, listen to the podcast and read the books or whatever. And, but it's still like a really self-reliant place.
Yeah.
And to like not like, it's me.
But I have a big sign on my forehead.
Why is this interview getting so personal?
And that's our time.
But it's I think this really is it. If you've been high functioning and highly dependable and like, just able to do things and up for stuff your whole life, this is like the shadow side of that is, and I think again, within the context of our specific culture that is hyper individualistic and is really built on like BS narratives around men that are like not true because there is entire societies, our entire society is upheld by women who are, doing all the things in the background, making sure that, the trains are running on time, caring for the humans, that we are bringing into this world. And so just, I think one of the things that can be really helpful in breaking that framing, which I think leads us to a lot of these, like, I'm just going to embrace this hyper independence kind of way of doing things, is that like those guys at the top, whoever you're looking at, that's making the bajillions of dollars or on the big stages or, having whatever, these huge audiences. It's because they are so ridiculously resourced and they have been socially so for the entirety of their lives, whether or not they grew up with hardly anything, just socially, they're set up to receive more. And men, I think, they're socialized, not to overgeneralize here, but they're socialized to be like, yeah, help me. Yeah, you do that for me. Like, and there's no shame. And so I think just reminding ourselves that like, if that is actually what is occurring and that we should also shoot for our own resourcing. Like it's a whole big part of my framework is about how we need to be as women better resourced, and that like we have to fight to believe in anything that we do, that not only that we deserve resourcing, but that it's required. It's actually required that you're good at just asking for shit constantly. Because that's really how things are won. So, yeah, I don't even remember the original question, but hopefully I've answered it.
You totally have. I feel like I immediately think of cold DMs, like people
Mm.
showing up in your inbox and just being like, hey, blank, I can at 10x your Instagram following or
Oh,
whatever. And
yeah.
so like when I think about asking for help or like being really bold about asking for what I want, that is immediately what comes to mind is
Oh,
like the people
interesting.
that kind of just like pester everybody and like, or people that, and maybe some of this is like sometimes I feel super overwhelmed in my own life by the things that
Mm.
I have going on that um I don't want to just be, I don't want to be someone that in my email closing I'll be like, let me know if you need anything, but secretly like, please don't ask me, I don't have any more to give. And so I think
Yeah.
I feel like hyper aware of like that there might be other people who are saying like, I want to help you, but like beneath the surface they're kind of feeling that same thing, like, please don't ask me, like I already have too much to do. And it's really hard
Yeah.
to step into that space of being like, I'm just going to believe people what they say. I'm just going to believe them, and if they say that they want to help, then I have to be okay with like saying, yeah, I'll accept your help for this. But that's really hard.
No, I hear you. And I think it's because we go through the world like projecting onto everyone else all that we know, which is our own inner world, right?
Mm.
And so the trick that our minds play on us is that we actually know what's going on with other people, that we actually ever know what other people are thinking. Like, in your whole life may be full of experiences that point to like, no, like I have a good sense of this. I kind of know like
Mm.
when people are dealing with this or thinking that about me or themselves or whatever. But it's all perspective and it can all shift because we all know people where it's just like, you're just that just move through the world like it's magic. And because that's what
Yeah.
that's just how they see themselves and the world. And so that's how the world responds to them. And so we always have the choice. And we have to just have to remember, first of all, that like, that it is a choice, but we always have the choice to just pursue a different perspective. Because the question becomes, how is this helping me? And is it hurting anyone to ask?
Hmm.
I think one of the things I learned early in my coaching training with my where I got certified was that it's incredibly important to hold other people as being whole and creative and resourceful, and that we do others a disservice by just assuming that they can't, they won't, that they can't operate out of their own agency and on their own terms, and that we have any control over that. It's, it's not real. And I think we're socialized, I think, especially as women, to believe that we know better, that we're taking care of people, where, that we're thinking ahead, and it's just not real.
Hmm.
It just isn't real.
That's a very, very helpful way to think about that, and definitely something that I've had to work on, especially in the last handful of years. Um, I was thinking the other
Yeah.
day about like this funny belief that we have that we can make other people change. And
Mhm.
then I think about the things in my own life that I've wanted to change for years and haven't been able to. And I'm like, why do I think I would be better at it with somebody else than I am with my own self? Like, that's ridiculous. And also what a freeing thing to just be unshackled from this responsibility of having to make sure everybody's okay and make sure everybody's doing what I think they're supposed to be doing, or moving through the world in a certain way, or rescuing them from their own uncomfortable emotions. When
Yeah.
I think about being an ambitious, very self-motivated person, which is what is required in a lot of entrepreneurial ventures,
Mm.
um, it can be really difficult when other people don't get it, when other people are not, wired that way. And is the loneliness of that, I don't know if it's type of personality or type of internal motivation, something that you work with your clients on?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
um Absolutely. I think you know sometimes it's like, doesn't really matter where it comes from, like, is it a personality type, is it some traumatic thing that happened, or whatever. but I do work with my clients on moving beyond an identity that is pure, that it's actually isolating. It's like there's a way that which we can label something as like independence and self-motivated. That's actually I seek isolation. There's some hiding thing that's going on as well, and it's like, it's not to make anything bad or good. It's just that we have to be aware of the full picture of what's happening, and raising that awareness and just giving folks another angle with which to kind of see what's going on, like, asking yourself certain questions, because we don't need to change anything in our work or lives that's working for us, but it's like, is it working for you? Where is that failing you? Okay, can we examine that? Right? It's just about, as objectively as we possibly can, looking at like, what are the pluses and minuses of operating this way truly? Where are you winning out? Where are you losing? And is it preventing you from living the life that you want to live or doing the work that you want to do? If it's preventing you from that, then perhaps there's something to examine there, you know? But yeah, I think it's just like creating optionality in the midst of all that, where it's, you're not, if you're not feeling great about it, like if it's not all win, then like we can do something about that. But if you love it here, then okay, baby, you like it, I love it. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, do I love it here? What is this costing me?
Yeah. So as we're trying to find or build up a community around ourselves of people who are like-minded, I think many people can think that I don't have access to that. I live in a small town, or I live in too big of a city. I don't know where to go to find people that are on the same path as me or interested in the same things. How do you recommend people go about finding community that can encourage them in the way that you're talking about? Obviously, besides like finding an awesome coach like yourself.
Yeah. If you know another human, then you have a chance. And I love that you brought up the juxtaposition of like, I'm in a big city, there's too many people, I can't find community. I'm in the middle of nowhere, there's not enough people, I can't find community, and it's about examining that can't find. I think that we're looking for like something that is prepackaged on the shelf to like, can I just go and grab it and then like have community? And community is actually something that we do. It's not something that we have. So what is it that I want to commit to within myself where I start just operating as a communal person? Who is it that I'm already connected with, but I'm not really connecting with? That maybe I've had some, if I really think about it, the way I feel about this person, like, I really think this person's super interesting, or I really love that last conversation we had. Have you ever told them how you feel about them, or that you would like to deepen your connection with them? And that's where it starts. It's one conversation at a time. Community builds one conversation at a time. So if we stay stuck in the story of, I can't find it, it's really hard, where are my people? That you're never going to get into the action of community builder. You're never going to become a community builder, a communal person. You just decide, I want to be more communal right now. Where's the community that's available to me right now? How can I show up differently with them? Because we never know who people know, who people's cousins are. You have no idea what's available to you until you put yourself out there. I just had a conversation with a girlfriend the other day. She's gone through this massive life transition, moving, just like cutting off a very long-standing career, very prestigious kind of career, to pursue this dream that she's always had, put herself out for this like huge job, got to like final rounds in it, and was like, yes, this is it. I'm finally like gonna, embark on this new future and like kind of show those people that what I'm doing is not crazy and that I have what it takes, and then got shot down. And so she reaches out to me because she knows like that, A, I'm her friend, I care, but B, that this is what I talk to my clients about. She was like, hey, can we talk? Immediately, I FaceTime her back, and she gives me this whole story. I'm like, first of all, I'm really sorry this happens to you, and this really sucks. Second of all, why the fuck am I just now finding out that you've gone through all this? Because it's not like I also haven't, like checked in. And that's what we'll do. We won't reveal what we're really
Yeah.
going through with people. She reached out to me because she knows I care, right? We love each other. And so I think, and I do this too. Like, this is like no judgment on my friend. I do this too, and it is my work. But I think that is the thing. It's like, it's how we avail ourselves to like what is already right in front of us. That's how you find community. There's no finding. It's there. And it may not be perfect. I'm just going to say that. It may not be perfect at first, but just start. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I come from a really tiny, small town in, the cornfields of Southern Illinois. Like, I get it, what it can be like in that. And I also lived for 10 years in New York, right? I get what that can be like as well, community building but it's possible, one human being at a time, one conversation at a time. It could be the person that you're sitting next to at the airport. You're like, you know what? I'm just going to open myself up to this person. I don't know. Their energy just seems interesting to me. Fuck it. Lifelong friendships are built this way sometimes. You hear these stories all the time. You just have to decide, I am going to be in community. I'm going to take action.
It feels like the overarching motivator is curiosity. It's like without attachment to needing it to be any particular thing. It's just like following the trail, like following your nose, following what is in, like you said, like following what's interesting to you, following this, hey, like this person seems like they have good ideas, or I like their vibe. I like their energy. I like how they kind of are showing up in the line at the airport. Yes. Like that there isn't really any downside to just following our curiosity.
Yeah. I love that.
Why do you think it is that we don't? I got all teary-eyed when you were talking about like with your friend, like, why am I just now hearing about this? And I 100% am like so guilty of doing so much figuring out on my own before I then like present it to even the people who are closest to me. It's like, let me get it to a place that's like manageable and I've maybe like figured it out so that I don't have to, I don't know, burden them with asking them for their support or advice. I don't know. It's just, I've talked with many people who have shared this like frustration with themselves of like, why can't I reach out when things really have fallen apart? Like, why do I need to feel like it's somewhat put back together before I can go to anybody with that?
Yeah. So I can't speak for everyone, but I will speak for like the kinds of clients that I attract. I will speak for myself and my stuff, right? And there's this conditioning wherever it has come from in there. At least this is one piece of it that I know. There's this conditioning that we hold, and I think it is particularly with women, yet again, where it's very important for us to protect people from our mess. And I think we see it as a form of love, of care. I care for people by never letting them have to even bear witness to how messy I am. Because that would do them a disservice and that would hurt them. But humans are messy by nature. And so what we end up doing is we don't protect people from our mess. We're protecting people from us. It's like, let me protect you from who I am, from the truth of where I am, from the truth of, you know what I mean? Like, it's you. And that's not our intent, but that's what happens. And like when we have to get things good enough to present the problem, and it's like, well, the problem's half fixed now.
Right.
And it's like, I wanted to shield you from those messy bits. But one of the things that I do, just like to offer like a tool on the other side of that, because I don't think there's like a magic, there's no magic bullet here. There's no quick solve. But one of the things that I definitely do to help myself in these moments where I'm trying to protect people from my mess is to remind myself of when someone did not protect me from their mess and what actually played out, which is I felt good. I'm living in my messy fucking life, going through all these things that I feel like I don't always know which way to go. Like, I don't always feel like I know how to navigate. When you present me with your mess, it's not mine. And it gives me a moment where I have clarity. Like, we can see other people's problems, like, with clear vision. and it gives me a sense of purpose. I think that like the narrative that kind of can come in there where it's like, but I don't want to be one of those people who's always, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like always. And that's but it's like, is that what's actually happening?
Hmm.
Where it's just like, I'm inviting you into the flow of my life. And some seasons are really fucking hard and other seasons are not. And you, again, holding you as creative and whole and resourceful, can decide how much you want to come in or not. And that's okay if you don't get that perfect either. Neither one of us can protect each other from, like, we're all just going to be navigating it together. But I do, as a tool for myself, I will remind myself in those moments where it's just like, I can't. I remind myself of the last time. And it really helps now because I have some relationships where this is like an expressed intent between us and our friendship, which is like, I know I'm terrible about this. So when one of us does reach out, we just love on each other so hard. Like, I'm so glad that that you sent this to me. It makes me feel so much closer to you, that you trusted me with this, that you brought me in. I am here for you. Or like, babes, I'm in the middle of some shit. I'm going to call you in 48 hours when I'm not, but we have created this, like, this model of possibility with each other. So that helps me to reinforce in my mind that this is okay. And that this is how I really want things to be. And that this actually feels really good when somebody that I love brings me into their truth, into like their whole self. They're not withholding themselves from me, because that actually erodes trust over time.
Yes. Why? I was trying to think about, like, what is the similarity between us feeling hesitation to share the really messy down times, the really dark times with people? What is the connection between that and also the hesitation to share the messy excitement about things, or to share the wins, or to share the things that we're working towards, that we're, I don't know, it's almost like if I say it out loud, then it's going to jinx it and I won't get it. Maybe that's one of the components here, but I'm curious about, like, what do we think the connection is between the hesitation to share the messy dark stuff and also to share something that we're just feeling really excited about, or like a really big W? Like, why are we hesitant to share that with even the people who are closest to us?
You know what? I think that, like, perfection actually exists in our minds as this, like, highly controlled middle ground. And it's like,
oh yeah,
anything that gets, it's like, that's out here is like,
yes,
no, I can't, that feels out of control. Anything
yes,
that's way down below down here, it's like, that feels like I need to just, like, let's just maintain a neutral stance of strength, a position of strength. And anything that falls outside of that, I feel like just feels like, whoa, that might be destabilizing. Something weird might happen that I don't feel like I can control. So that's how I kind of visualize it, I guess.
I love that so much, because even just having like this mental image shift of perfection not being the height, but actually being the middle, is really helpful to me. Like, I think you're exactly right that anything that feels too out of control feels off limits. And so if I was going to admit how much anticipatory excitement I have about this upcoming thing, if I was to admit that to anybody, that feels outside of that box, that perfectionistic box. But I can't remember where I heard this, but they were saying, on a heart monitor, you've got the boop boop, it's like the peak and the valley. And this is what it is to experience being human. It's to experience the highs and the lows. And if we are constantly trying to get ourselves just to the middle, that's actually flatlining. Yeah, that's no good.
Yeah. And it's a flat experience, but like, that's something that it feels more controllable, But yeah, I love that comparison of the heart monitor, because I think that that's absolutely true.
What are some of the things that you are feeling lit up about lately, that you feel excited about and that you see coming along on your entrepreneurship path?
Okay. So at least a couple of things. So one, I'm actually in this moment of re-centering. My youngest just turned, or he's about to turn 2 in about a month, depending on when this episode airs. I don't know. But he's about to turn 2, and it's like I've hit that. Like it's like after your kid turns 1, like there's like a there's like okay, we made it through the first year, and then when they turn 2, it's like okay, now I'm coming into, not back into myself, but into like whoever my new self is, like the new season, like something is settling, right? The dust is settling in a very clear way. And what that means for me is there are a lot of, I think, decisions around just, this is like on the entrepreneur side of things. This is like CEO, business owner Monique talking right now. There are a lot of doors that have been open in the season that I created for myself prior to now. In these last 2 years, I made a decision to really focus on depth over breadth, and in like really intensely. So it's like, what are the only things that matter for me? My business has always been designed, as I said, to fold around my lifestyle. My business was birthed out of a shift in my life, and I needed my work to fold around my life. So that it's like, that has got to maintain as sustain itself as a constant. And then what I also know to be true is that like, or knew to be true is that like, I love my podcast. It's like this creative outlet for me. And I just want to focus on that, but in a really easeful way. My podcast episodes are bi-weekly, through the season I've come through, right? And I was like, I just need it to be like consistent and easeful and good. And that's what I feel like I've delivered on. And then my clients, like those are the only 2 things that matter in my business and in my life. It's like my health, my wholeness, my spirit, my family, and that has been what it has needed to be. I'm not going to pretend like it was all like, rainbows and butterflies, but I think by and large, looking back, I feel like I've lived that season. Now a new season is opening for me. And one of the things that I've tested in the last few months, the last 6 months in particular, are retreat experiences. So one of the things that, I haven't launched my own retreat, but I was like, okay, from where I'm at right now, I'd like to, actually how we met was at that Huddle retreat years ago. And I haven't done retreats like that in a while. And I was like, okay, I'd like to get back into that. And I want to see what it's like to be in intimate, curated spaces with women of color and to facilitate that. And so I've had some of those experiences, and that has led to like all kinds of new doors opening and opportunities and network. And so the thing that I think can happen when you're like doing what it is that you set out to do, whether it is like, tempered and focused like my season has been, is that you're doing what you're supposed to do. So a lot of opportunities present themselves as a result of that. And I think I have been allowing these potential opportunities to kind of paralyze me into like, I don't know which. It's like I see like all these doorways have opened and I have not even really wanted to peek through, but I just see these wide open doors and I'm just kind of looking at all of them. Like, which one do I want to do? Do I want to grow my podcast to millions of people and like start doing twice a week episodes eventually? And questions like that, right? And what I am working on now is just the realization of coming back into like, well, no, my original intent, the original vision for my business has been like depth from the beginning. It has been about who my clients are and focusing on intimate space with them, period. So I don't want to be on the Today Show promoting some big thing or like worried about like, getting 10 million downloads on my podcast, right? Like that's not where for now, it doesn't make sense. And so anyway, I'm zeroing in on what matters most for me and how my business will be like an expression of that. And I'm feeling better about it. This is like in the last 3 days. So that's where I'm at as a CEO. I don't know if that was like clear or vague, but that's where I'm at. And topically, we've been touching on it quite a bit today, which I love. This area of intimacy and connection and bonding and friendship, and how I can bring more of that into my practice, is terribly exciting to me because I do think it's in these little micro moments with ourselves, the decisions we make around how we need to treat ourselves, like the relationship we have to our own needs. Like that's what shapes how intimate or connected we feel to other people. And I'm like, how can I help my clients get better at those things, or feel more comfortable, more confidence in those ways? And so I'm becoming more and more of a student of that. I am going to be continue to do intimate retreats with women through 2025. I kind of set a goal for like no more than like 4 in a year, maybe 5, depending on if Oprah calls me one day. Got to answer that call.
Mm-hmm.
And working, with women who maybe their vision is to be speaking to hundreds of thousands and millions of people, or work, like their impact. But I don't want to be ushering the hundreds of thousands and millions of people directly with my work and my brand. I want it to be as a flow through the intimate connections I have with my clients and the work I do in intimate spaces with them. So
yeah,
that's what I'm excited about. That's how it's all coming together for now.
I love that. And thank you for sharing just that, it's within the last 3 days that you've gotten some clarity on some of these things. It's so helpful to hear, even, people that we admire and we see from the outside, like it seems like they've got it all together. Like they're still doing the hard work behind the scenes, like everybody is. We're just trying to figure it out. But one of the things that caught my attention that you said was that not only are you creating these spaces of intimacy and deep connection with people in the spaces that you're curating with your clients and at these small retreats, but also teaching people how to do that for themselves. I think one of the, I won't say gross, but maybe gross things that I see in some coaching communities is the like, you have to be here in order to feel connected, instead of like, can we not be dependent just on this stream of connection here for you to feel like you're in your life in a way that feels like deeply meaningful to you? So like, come here and get hyped up and learn then how to have the hard conversations and change your behavior in all of your relationships to have deepening intimacy and connection, even if you live in a big city or a small town. I love that a lot. So one of the things that you said about I wanted to ask you about what types of like practical support you have in your own life as you are peeking through the doors and trying to decide what to say yes and no to. I love that you have this intentional relationship with a few friends where you say like, okay, for reals, like we're going to work on this being in our messy selves with each other. I think that, I mean, I'm going to have conversation with a couple of my friends to that same effect of like, okay, I'm really bad at this. And I want to, I know that you're a safe person to practice this with. So you said like that you have friends that you're intentionally doing that with, and who else do you have in your support system that is helping, just kind of not only helping you navigate decisions for yourself, but also helping you become more of who you are?
Yeah. So I definitely have those friends. That's been really important for me. And it's just like constant work, that friend work, friend intimacy, is, it's really challenging, I think, in our culture, but it's been so worth it with every stride that I've made, to pursue that. So that's a huge bolster. And I think bonus points when it comes to my leadership side of things, when I also have some of those friends are entrepreneurs. So I have, so we can speak on that level as well, with a sense of clarity and understanding. So I am forming, another like group, small group of like girlfriends. We're like going to kick off our like a monthly call in a couple of weeks. We just have found ourselves at like, we're kind of all arriving at these kind of crossroads in our business, and we should be talking more intimately with each other. So there's that. Then there is my coach, and what she has really offered me in terms of having some regular cadence of reflection back to me, like what it is that she's seeing and the long-term relationship that she and I have built. So she really knows me and what matters to me. And it like calls always come like right on time. We speak monthly,
Mm.
and it's always like this. I'm so glad that the call happened right now today. And it just helps me bring myself back into myself. I just reached back out to my old therapist because I had not been working with my therapist for the last year or two. Yeah. And I was like, all right, girl, it's time to get some more therapy sessions in. 'Cause I think coaching and therapy really complement each other. I've had like quite a therapy journey, right? Since the beginning when my mother got sick all those years back. Um, and so I feel like I have a great foundation. Then I worked in a mental health startup and all that, but it's like, it's not enough.
Mhm.
You've got to just keep talking to folks. And then let's see. Lastly, I think I'm trying to also use the way that like the way that I express myself through like my business messaging, even on this podcast, to just like be as honest and transparent as I possibly can. Just to also practice being more of me in public,
Mm.
and like not making it like I have to be, this is the buttoned up, super fancy version of me. And here's like the real, like on the floor, crying in the closet, like something in between,
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
still need to be able to show up, but I'm trying to invite more of me. So there aren't like these, this like fractured experience of myself, moving through the world. So I say those are the things that come to mind primarily.
Do you see any gaps, I guess, in your support that you're not sure how to fill, but you feel like it would be really nice to have this additional kind of support in there?
Hmm. It's funny, that question. What I truly believe is that I'm just responding to a society, to
Mm.
like a culture that that needs us to be fragmented. And so I'm filling in, like, it's like I'm plugging up like holes in the
Mhm.
ship, where water is leaking in, but it's like meant to have me kind of underwater, um, where really it's like the ship should have just been built better, and for me to be buoyant and to be in connection with people, to like not fight for every square inch of time on
Mm.
my calendar or somebody else's calendar, so that we can connect, to not have to have the pressure of like we need to live here or there in order to like have access to certain opportunities, or so I think I'm doing all the things that I possibly can. In addition to, I will also say, it's like having help in my home.
Mm.
Like we have an incredible, wonderful woman who is our housekeeper and comes on a regular basis. And that immense privilege frees me up to say I'm going to add, this monthly call or this call with a girlfriend, or like to take a walk, and like those kinds of things. But again, like that's a function of me trying to operate within a system and structure that's, you know, like I think that we would more naturally be doing these things and not
Mhm.
feel so disconnected, and it wouldn't feel so hard if
Yeah.
we weren't battling all this nonsense. So yeah, I guess that's kind of my answer to that.
That's a great answer. It reminds me of the thing that probably will live with me forever from when we met at that retreat. You were offering, some one-on-one sessions, and I was talking with you about how overwhelmed I felt in my life with all the things, all the
Mhm.
responsibilities. And you said that that I actually get to be the one to decide what enough is.
Mm.
If I actually don't have a clearer picture of what enough is, then I will always be scrambling. I will always feel like I'm not quite measuring up. And I have
Mhm.
applied that perspective in pretty much every area of my life now. In my business, what is
Mm.
enough? In my home, what is enough? In my relationships, what is enough? And it has been so freeing, because asking that question of what is enough, to me, what's enough in here? What's enough deep
Mhm.
down in my guts is such a clarifying question about what exactly is important to me. And so some of the, societal pressures of like what my house should look like or how clean my house should be or like how put together my kids' outfits are or whatever, like so much of that has fallen to the wayside because I'm like, there's
Mm.
only so much room in what I'm going to now consciously and intentionally decide what enough is. And I can let all of that go. And it's just like, it's freed up so much mental space and it's relieved so much emotional anguish of like having to twist myself into this pretzel of perfection in every area of my life. And so anyway, just a retroactive thank you for that. That's that has really stuck with me. And I hope that the people who are listening to this podcast also to get to benefit from the wisdom that you shared with me in that session, that you get to decide what enough is.
I love that. I love that has had like such far-reaching implications for you, and that it still serves as a support. It's like, it's so simple, some of these things, right? Where it's just like once the light is on, it's like, oh, like some stuff you can't unsee, and it can shift a lot. So I'm so glad that reflection really did that for you.
Do you have any final words? Of course, I'm going to share in the episode notes where everyone can find you if they, and please listen to her podcast, everybody. It's amazing. I listen to it on the regular and just find so much value from it. And I love listening to your voice and your wisdom and all the things that you share, of course, tend to be applicable in not just business, but in every area of my life. But so any parting words for listeners before we go?
Yes, thank you again for having me. This has been wonderful. One like parting piece of wisdom, and then I'll tell y'all where you can find me, is just to go back to what I said earlier, which is like to not tolerate feeling stuck, to not tolerate isolation in any area of your life. Sometimes it's like, and depending on where you are, that I get it, but sometimes it's a couple $100 that stands between you and something that could really free you up to feel less alone in a thing, and to really prioritize that part of yourself. Like, you're worth it. So where you can find me, I'm primarily on Instagram. I'm working on my presence on LinkedIn. My handle is Monique R. Shields. So you can't forget the R, Monique R. Shields, anywhere pretty much. And if you want to check out my website, it's moniquershields.com. And my podcast is Ambition Without Compromise. And the whole point of the podcast really is to open up this conversation and dare us to define ambition, define our enoughness for ourselves, and to do so with boldness and creativity and bravery and unalone. Okay. So yeah, I think that's it for where you can find me.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much for your time this morning. And for all of my listeners, before we go, P.S. we expect